Noah, I'm rocking my gear, bro. It is a good day to be a Philly sports fan, specifically a Phillies fan. And, a decade is a decade. I mean, that's a significant moment for them to finally get back to the postseason. Do you remember what you were doing last night when you found out they clinched?
Yeah, so I believe we just wrapped up, the post-game media in Barclays Center, and I was walking through the rain to where I was staying over at my cousin's house and getting bombarded with texts from friends who were very excited. And I was trying to get caught up and asking about Aaron Nola's apparently brilliant start and just exactly how the Phillies got the job done in Houston. But a cool day for, the Philly sports scene, and the Sixers felt secondary for a night, but perhaps they will be in the postseason spotlight yet again soon enough.
I feel like when Noah's walking through the raindrops kind of dodge him. He stays dry even though he's in the rain. That's just my vision of the great Noah Levick.
I don't know. Yeah, I guess I don't let the rain bother me. It is what it is. So I'll try to subscribe to that notion, and maybe that will help me a little more, and I'll just feel dry every step I take.
Is the playoff beard coming back, Noah? Will you bring back the playoff beard?
That is not the intent, but I guess you never know. I guess we have a long time to the playoffs, so if I wanted to make a commitment, this would be the time to start, and it could build up before then. But I don't think that will be happening this year.
Welcome to the Sixers Talk podcast, brought to you by Wilmington University, WilmU Works, Danny Pommells, Noah Levick, our producer, Ben Barry, and the energy of coming off of an actual preseason basketball game is floating in the air as we do this podcast. And Noah Levick, fresh off the train from Brooklyn, he was in the BK, taking in all the action. We'll get to Ben Simmons being booed. We'll talk about Tyrese Maxey being the best player on the floor in the first quarter, or maybe even the whole first half. And a little bit more about the nuances of the game and where things are headed with this team. And I think Maxey will be a great place to start because we're concerned about this squad rather than what is going on with the other team. And Maxey looked fantastic. He comes out and throws up two of those heat check threes that we have come to enjoy and love. And it's just nothing but boom. Like, he's just right where he was last season. And that had to be fun to watch and, like, raise your eyebrows a little bit as you're sitting there courtside watching this unfold with Maxey. Bro, the Nets played Simmons, Durant, and Irving, and Maxey was the best player on the floor.
Yeah, scored the Sixers' first 10 points. And I think at this point, just letting him stroll into threes is not a good idea. And
right.
The Nets, obviously, this star-laden version of their team, defense is always the main concern, and it was not an encouraging start there for them. But obviously, Maxey took full advantage, pedal to the metal right away.
Right.
And for me, I've been watching just whether he can indeed make this progress with drawing fouls and becoming more efficient in that area of the game. And sure enough, he's doing that really well. I think just showing this ability to play through contact, thanks to the added muscle, just the experience and the know-how of this is how you get whistles in the NBA. So, yeah, he was everything you could have asked for and then some. 20 first half points, and there was no need to see Tyrese Maxey in the second half. And it was cool for the Sixers, who sat their big names in contrast to Brooklyn, that the Maxey Melton backcourt got plenty of reps, and the first 7 or 8 minutes of both of those guys were strong as individuals. And then as a tandem too, you see this idea coming into life of these guys can be really fast and fun, disruptive defensively, and also just play at this pace that gets everyone involved and enables the Sixers to be a dangerous team across the board.
The fine line among all this revelry with Maxey is going to be can he maintain the aggression when the other stars are on the court? And they've been imploring him and encouraging him in that regard, but no Embiid, Harden, Tucker, or Daniel House. So Maxey had the floor to himself, so to speak, particularly as a carryover player from the last few seasons, although he's only 21 and one of the youngest guys out there. But he saw his opportunity and he took it. And we've seen that when those other guys aren't on the floor. Do you think that will continue to be something he may have to deal with and adjust to, of continuing? We talked about the deferring a lot last season, and his aggression is something they're trying to encourage him to do. Do you feel like what you saw last night was a step in the right direction to him being that aggressive guy, even regardless of who's on the floor?
I think there's no way it was negative in any way. I do think, right, as you noted, just there was a notable difference in his approach when James Harden and or Joel Embiid are on the court with him versus not, which is fair enough. But I think what is worth monitoring is when those two guys are in action, whether he can maintain his aggression, whether he can continue to play in transition a lot of the time. But I think last night, really, the big notable takeaway for me with Maxey is just the pairing with Melton, and that it indeed does seem like it's going to be conducive to him playing at a fast pace and also being the clear lead ball handler, the clear number one option. And De'Anthony Melton is not shy about shooting and is not a bad offensive player, but he is far from the number one guy when Tyrese Maxey's on the floor. And perhaps that's a good thing because it clarifies Maxey's role and just allows him to play in this natural way that isn't necessarily the case when he's next to two all-stars like Embiid and Harden.
Start college, build skills, and complete your degree with Wilmington University. 100% online options and affordable tuition makes WilmU work for you. Learn more at wilmu.edu.
Man, the scouting report is going to change, I'm sure, for Maxey, because he's almost, approaching that LeBron level where he looks at the hand before throwing up the threes, with the way he walks into those three-pointers, man, because he's a few steps beyond the three-point line, so he can get the good look. He obviously has the range out that far, and we have also talked about this a lot. His form squaring up to the basket and the follow-through just looks the same every time, with the feet and the shooting pocket and everything. And it was even a sweet fadeaway, dip into the side jumper that he hit there in the first half that I really enjoyed, a little JJ Redick style. And are you feeling like Melton, it just feels like he's such a great compliment to what Maxey does, because he is very much defense oriented and he's going to run. So, he's causing turnovers and getting transition buckets, and Maxey's there to scoop the ball up and get up the floor. It seems like a great pairing, like you mentioned.
I think so. It'll be interesting to see who those three, who the three guys are alongside those two. Mm-hmm. Last night, Paul Reed got the nod at backup center, Matisse Thybulle and, Tobias Harris alongside them. But absolutely, I think De'Anthony Melton, first possession of the game, he gets a deflection, and I'm just writing stuff down, and it's like 3 minutes in, he's got a steal, he's got a near steal, he's got a deflection. He's just doing something on every single play, hence the nickname Mr. Do Something in Memphis. And it really does feel appropriate that he just has this consistent impact on the game and this energizing effect. And we know Tyrese Maxey's all energy, so hey, a little more can't hurt in that department. It was funny too with Maxey, obviously comes out nailing the threes, but I do believe he threw in a little 19-footer, and we know from Sam Cassell that was an emphasis this season, working on the mid-range game, and I would imagine he continues to experiment with some new tools within the three-point line. But I think though Cassell considers the mid-range important with the playoffs in mind, it is important to remember that he's not telling Maxey to pass up open threes by any means. The Sixers still want him firing. And as you say, you compare this to a year ago or 2 years ago, and it's wild to think about the progress and how this just feels so normal now that, oh, sure, he just starts the game off making 2 threes, looking like the best player on the court. But that kind of is who Tyrese Maxey is at this point. And the Sixers are going to depend on him continuing to improve, I think, in all likelihood.
Here we are 2 weeks from opening night. October 18th against Boston is creeping up on us, the first of 4 preseason games. We got our first look that we didn't get to see Montrezl Harrell, PJ Tucker or Daniel House. We got to see Montrezl Harrell in, I would guess, a high-intensity 12 minutes. He ends up with 6 fouls, but showed a lot of energy and offensive rebounding prowess, drawing fouls, that tenacity and toughness that they have lauded here in the offseason. The 76ers have takeaways from Montrezl's time on the floor. I'm sorry, I came from the Montel Jordan era, so that kind of slips out sometimes. But what are your takeaways from Trez and his time on the floor, and how much stock are you putting in the tough calls, maybe some that could have gone either way with him, getting the 6 fouls? Although it seems like the marching orders from the coaching staff was that, hey, don't worry about fouls, go out there and be aggressive.
Yeah, I mean, you can't have 6 fouls in 12 minutes. That just can't happen.
It is preseason, though. Come on.
Anything can happen in a preseason, and it's fine, and it's not a big deal. But, geez, that is excessive, to put it mildly. And Paul Reed had 2 of his own in his first stint, including one on a Kevin Durant jumper. So you're looking up early in the second quarter, and Sixers centers have just 7 or 8 fouls, and you're thinking about how you certainly don't want, the new additions to be compounding some of the problems in that department. But Harrell, I think, is going to be super reliable with points and rebounds, much like we said in past years with Dwight Howard. And I think the Sixers, with Howard, did like that he had this agitating, instigating kind of role that he embraced. And I expect Harrell to be the same way, where if you're on the court with him, he's not going to make life comfortable for you. You can't just be lazy and forget to box him out or not get inside position on him. He is going to be really productive, I think, as an offensive player for this team. Going to draw some fouls, which is great, and the Sixers will hope the fouls that he commits go down, and I expect they will. Obviously, this was an exceptional sort of game with the fouling, but the Sixers do want him to play an aggressive style while also being a little more responsible than he was last night.
You talk about the pairing with Maxey and Melton, or how much time they'll see on the floor together and what the rotations might be. We heard Doc Rivers say at Media Day that between Maxey, Reed, and Matisse Thybulle, no one has worked harder, this offseason. Are you seeing more of a push for them to have like a strong, consistent second unit? Are you seeing the rotations tighter in that area, or do you see room for other guys to work their way in? I say that because a guy like Trevelin Queen, who they signed, didn't see much time until the fourth quarter. It seemed like Bassey also didn't see as much opportunity. Where do you see the rotations as we head into this game with the Cavaliers on Wednesday? Are they tighter than maybe we might think, or do you think there's room for other guys to work their way in?
So firstly, I don't think there's anything close to an established second unit. You even get the glimpse at the practice they live streamed from training camp, and there was a bunch of guys rotating in between the second and third unit. And I think there are still legitimate internal competitions there. For instance, Korkmaz versus Joe, that's probably still open. Both guys hit some shots last night and did some positive things. I don't think Reed versus Harrell is, set in stone by any means either. And Doc Rivers has consistently called that like a collection of centers. So I think for the time being, he doesn't see there being one sole backup center for Joel Embiid. There are options there, and some guys will be better suited to different matchups. And some of it will just be, hey, who's had a better
Who's the hot hand?
who's the hot hand? And right now, Paul Reed's coming off a good game. Montrezl Harrell got his 10-5, but he also fouled out in 12 minutes. So, okay, we'll see what happens next time around. But the preseason will be interesting to see how things unfold there, and then also to see just how many backup 5 minutes PJ Tucker's getting, and whether there are other small ball configurations. We saw a Niang and Harris front court for a minute or two. Maybe there's a little more experimentation in that department. So rotation, by and large, I would not read too much into anything other than that things are still ongoing. With the end of the roster, it's not looking too good for Trevelyan Queen and Charles Bassey. And I think the biggest reason for that is just Isaiah Joe, time and time again, before the regular season anyway, continues to look like an NBA player. He led the team in scoring last preseason. He led the team in scoring in Summer League. He's gained significant muscle. He's impressed defensively at times. And last night he comes in the game and he gets his threes and he knocks them down. So you're Trevelyan Queen, a 25-year-old who's trying to carve out a spot, compared to Joe, a Daryl Morey draft pick who's a couple years younger and is a promising player. I think that's just a major uphill battle, and it's not looking like he's going to be on this team unless something huge changes here. And I would say it's probably the same for Bassey, because we outlined there are options at backup center, even if there's not a singular guy. And therefore, it looks like Bassey is probably going to be the odd man out at that position.
In that collection of centers, as Doc says, do you think he considers PJ Tucker as one of those rotation guys?
A big time, yeah. No, I think PJ Tucker is very much in that mix. And he does seem to have shifted his thinking, in part just because of the personnel, that a center doesn't have to be 7 feet tall, right? And obviously PJ Tucker is an extreme example of that at 6'5". But Paul Reed, Montrezl Harrell, PJ Tucker are all center options that he likes, qualities that these guys bring to the table. And, PJ Tucker, he should be. Like, he has to be one of the backup centers, because when he gets those opportunities, he consistently does a really good job at it. And you compare his post defense and his sturdiness and ability to maintain balance to anyone in the league, and I think more often than not, PJ Tucker is going to come out on top. So, absolutely, PJ Tucker and small ball will feature for this team this year. And they are a smaller team, and PJ Tucker is going to be part of that at the center spot.
You guys need to be sure to check out Noah Levick's work on NBCSportsPhiladelphia.com. He has an article up on the website now, which is an interesting kind of inside basketball look at the nuances that Doc Rivers is targeting here in training camp in the preseason with offensive rebounding versus transition defense, and finding the middle ground and the happy place between, successfully crashing the boards and getting back as well. So give us some more insight into what made you want to write that and what took you in that direction, because it seems like Doc is really trumpeting that, but obviously not something that's going to be necessarily a quick fix, and something they'll probably have to work on throughout the season.
Yeah, I think last year that just stood out as such a big problem, and you sense frustration by the end of the year with players and coaches. Matisse Thybulle, for instance, mentioned that, I think it was in February or March, the coaches were encouraging him to crash the offensive glass more. But then you hear from Dan Burke when he was serving as the interim head coach, and he says, we love Matisse's athleticism, but our transition defense is problematic, and therefore we have to be super worried about when we allow guys to be aggressive with offensive rebounding. So then you look ahead to this year, and they've got some rebounders compared to last season when they were the worst in the NBA with offensive rebounding rate. Obviously, Montrezl Harrell, De'Anthony Melton is downright excellent for a guard rebounder. PJ Tucker, as Sixers fans know, has a knack for timely offensive boards. And there just seems to be a more aggressive mentality overall. And I think this area specifically is one illustration of that. So, I asked Rivers about it before the game because I was just curious what the perspective is. And I think it sounded a little wait and see. And then on his own, he brings it up after the game. Like,
right.
he's pretty happy with the work they did. And the numbers were damn strong. I mean, they grabbed 22 offensive rebounds. They forced 27 turnovers. They're doing all these aggressive, stylistic things at a really high level in the first preseason game. And I think that's encouraging. But as you say, it's a work in progress. And it's going to be just I think, take something that takes time to figure out when you can take risks and when you do need to lean a little more in the conservative direction. But just by and large, this is a team that shouldn't need to compromise as much with the approach, shouldn't need to be as conservative. And I think just the way they play, it should be more fun to watch for those reasons, right? Like, everyone likes seeing teams that, just attack the ball and crash the offensive boards and don't worry about what could go wrong. And the Sixers, I think, are equipped to be that type of team. And at least so far, the messaging is way more in that direction than it was last year, where it was, oh boy, we don't want to get burned in transition, the way we often do.
Right. And you mentioned, the offensive rebounding was really bad last season, and hopefully, with Trez and PJ Tucker and other guys crashing the boards, they'll improve in that area. We're hoping, and, Doc Rivers has said that they won't see a lot of the, veteran players during the preseason because there's really no need to. But on Wednesday in South Philly, I anticipate probably seeing a little bit of Joel Embiid, a little bit of James Harden, to show the fans what's going on. The Cavaliers, a team that is definitely, imposing and having traded for Donovan Mitchell and having Evan Mobley and Darius Garland, et cetera, Kevin Love, Okoro. Are you feeling like the Sixers are putting themselves in a position to succeed if they don't give the starter some minutes against possibly, you see the Nets played Durant, Irving, and Simmons about 19 minutes each. Should the Sixers be doing that same thing in their home opener?
Yeah, I don't think Joel Embiid and James Harden are going to be sitting in street clothes forever. They are going to play games this preseason. I would not be surprised at all if they're all on the court for the Wednesday night matchup. But just to be clear, like, these guys were not having lazy days. Long after this shoot-around ended in Brooklyn, you have James Harden and Joel Embiid on adjacent courts going at it pretty hard with individual workouts. Harden's, of course, run by Sam Cassell, some friendly banter and having a good time, but also putting up like hundreds of deep three-point shots and fine-tuning the step back. And he's working on basketball. They just don't feel it was necessary to do so in Brooklyn. But absolutely, like, on the court reps, it's not a bad thing to, accumulate some of those before Boston, and that's going to happen. I think it's a little up in the air what the exact plan is, and some of that will just depend on how guys' bodies respond. And of course, they'll always lean in the cautious direction. But yeah, I think probably not a bad bet that these guys are going to play in at least 2 of the 3 remaining preseason games. And it'll be interesting to see what they show. But I don't think there's any concern on the Sixers' end that they're taking things too slow. I think they are confident in the plan they've set out. Some of that involves individual work. Some of it involves practices and training camps and shoot-arounds. And a little bit of it will be for fans to see as well.
No, I imagine that you're sitting there courtside and you got to like rub your eyes a little bit to make sure you're seeing what you're actually seeing, because for the first time in almost 500 days, Ben Simmons was on the basketball court and putting up shots. We saw him dunk the basketball. I thought we saw him with a few happy feet moments there where maybe they could have called a travel or two, but he was on the court. It's great for basketball that he is out there playing once again. He did receive some boos when he stepped to the free throw line. He ends up with a 6, 5, and 4 stat line. He goes 0 for 2 from the free throw line. Were there that many Sixers fans in the stands that he was getting booed, or was those some Brooklyn fans? Like, what was the deal with that?
That was odd. Yeah, I will say the initial reception was stronger and more positive than I expected.
During the starting lineup
just when he was introduced, there was a little buzz, and he got much louder cheers than anyone in that starting lineup. So credit to Brooklyn fans. They showed up to this game. It was a good amount of people in the seats by opening tip-off and feeling some excitement about Ben Simmons, putting on a jersey for their team. So that was cool to see that he got that support. And even for a preseason game, I think this carried a sense of being important. And it sure was for Ben Simmons, just his identity and his life is basketball, and he's back to doing that. So good for him. Yeah, I think in many ways he was the Ben Simmons we've known for a long time. There were special talent that, we got to see as far as cross-court passes and chasing Matisse Thybulle down in transition and showcasing the vision and the athleticism and the ball handling at 6'11", which he's now announced as. But he tried a fadeaway jumper that was ugly, and he missed 2 free throws. So the book on him continues to be that the shot is the no-brainer glaring flaw that he will need to show he's capable of making, should he be playing playoff games this year for the Brooklyn Nets.
And the defense also on display. There was one moment where he decided he wanted to get in Shake Milton shorts and almost forced him over to the half-court line. He was pressuring him so much. So I was happy to see him out there, man. I mean, come on, let's play basketball. That's why your name even rings a bell in the ether, because of your basketball prowess. And at a certain point, it comes down to just being on the court and doing it. Like, get out there and play. And I'm glad to see he's overcome the back issue, the mental health concerns. He was glowing on the JJ Redick, Old Man in the 3 podcast. So I see some good vibes coming off of him. Brooklyn as a team looked like a 8 seed or a play-in team like they were last season. Because I just didn't see as much continuity with them. It was a lot more ISO ball. But I think that Ben Simmons might provide more of that calming influence if he's the playmaker facilitator that he has been in years past. So I'm looking forward to the matchups. I mean, at its essence, basketball is about competition. It's about bringing your game, showing up, and playing hard. So if he's willing to do that and bring that to the Brooklyn Nets, then I'm excited to see how that Sixers team responds to his tenacity and him playing hopefully back at the all-star level.
Yeah, same page. I think the Nets didn't play well outside of one stretch where you're reminded, oh, wow, like I remember why everyone thought this team had such great potential. I believe the Sixers went up.
Is that 15-0 run specifically?
Yeah, they went up 20, and then boom, 15-0 run. And it hit you hard, it hit you fast, and you just see this team that if all the pieces click, you can understand why it's exciting to think about what might happen. But obviously you look ahead to the playoffs, and if your lead ball handler has these major concerns shooting-wise, you imagine that yet again is going to be a huge issue. But I think that is, not in the spotlight for the time being. I think from the Brooklyn perspective, they've got Ben on the court. He's healthy. He's feeling good. He's looking like himself. And that's all legitimately positive and encouraging heading into this year.
Bro, I gotta, we go through the whole offseason, the media day, the, training camp in South Carolina, and the Sixers show up without 3, possibly 4 starters and hung 42 points in the first quarter on the Brooklyn Nets. You had to be a little taken aback by that, because it definitely wasn't how I expected them to come out and perform. 42-point first quarter was wild.
I wasn't, just because, as we said, we know like the Nets defense. It's rough. I mean, they didn't play up to their potential either last night defensively. But yeah, the Sixers, they have this in them. If they make open 3-point shots, yeah, they can put up 40-point quarters. I do think the half-court execution impressed me. I think I was expecting a lot of the forced turnovers leading into Tyrese Maxey whizzing ahead of the pack sort of action. But in the half court, Doc Rivers calls an ATO and Tobias Harris curls around the screen and drains a three. It's like, okay, this team is clicking just execution-wise better than most NBA squads are on the preseason opener. So obviously seems to indicate that the work in Charleston, has been productive thus far, but preseason games, I think, are inherently fluky, and you get some weird numbers. You get Montrezl Harrell, 6 fouls in 12 minutes, and you're just really looking for bigger trends with the team. And as I said, the one that stood out to me last night is just they're playing aggressively, and they don't have to be as conservative with the way they approach the game. And I think if you're considering the big picture with this team with a couple weeks until the opener, that's a really good sign that they can improve upon last year.
The Cleveland Cavaliers next on the docket Wednesday in South Philly. Hope you can come out and enjoy the squad a little bit. I'm sure Sixers fans will bring a little bit more fervor and intensity to the preseason game maybe than Brooklyn did last night. But looking forward to it. Noah will be in the building. I'll be there as well. If you see us, say what's up, because we love you. All right. Thank you for listening to the Sixers Talk podcast, brought to you by Wilmington University. WilMU works for Noah. I'm Danny and Ben Berry. We'll see you next time.